Fuck it. All right. This is what I'd be like in a different life if I had stayed in school, amounted a lot of debt, and was still drinking and a loser. So this is this is Precarious Rex. Here we go. And this too I wrote just to show that I could. So I actually take Shakespeare's the speech All the World's a Stage, and reframed it and from As You Like It. Anyway, there we go. There is no democracy in the way of things. There is no democracy in the way of things. There is no democracy in the way of things. And tortured are the hands moved by the engine of a clock. The world as it is, whether you like it or not. For all the world's a cage, and we, men and women, merely its prisoners. And one man in his time can do many bids, and his time begins in name and birth certificate. With the measure of infant, with doctor's swift hand, with his first humiliating scene in the very first public act. Welcome to the world, baby. You ain't seen nothing yet. Then on to schoolyard and lunchbox, then off to factory feed and process. Bright face, clean teeth, amongst others, new to the fact that there is no democracy in the way of things. Then on to fighter, then lover, soldier, company man, true believer, full of strange and tragic oaths to a world of jealous competition. And how in this time he shall live, firm now in the fact that one day he shall die. And how on this stage he shall stream, and how on this stage he shall strive. Then on to eyes wise with familiarity that like cancer grows, and as the imagination begins to bend with the spine, his last years, dead man walking, voice trembling, silence encroaching, eyes fading, failure coming into view as time served ends this strange eventful history just as it began, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, oblivion to oblivion, imprisoned, leaving nothing behind him but measurements to be weighed, documented by doctor's certificate. But let us not begin or end this journey in such morbid fashion. Let us instead join our hero midstream, some dash stream, somewhere between realization, acceptance, somewhere in the way of things. Enter stage left, Precarious Rex, the king of debt, brown bagging on a splintered park bench, man of letters, adjunct professor in the valley of a saint, named for an avenging angel in search of all that went wrong. I made my way to the corner of Mission and the Sea, leaving the steps of the library, not the jailers, though I am no stranger to either long-standing and altogether far too public institutions of coercion and correction. Ha ha! And it was there, in these hours of early sun, on a route of a familiar post in a favorite park along my morning constitutional, killing time, reviving dreams, waiting upon some happier hour, hailing from some brighter horizon, a round or two of catching up with an old colleague. Where and when occurred is the wrong word, and this I mean to be precise, lest you get the wrong impression. Like so much of life, it was a thought returned. More on the contemplation of phantom neurons later. Let us instead take a moment to ponder how often and with what mystery do thoughts reoccur? How, when, and what frequency do they begin to shape the mind? No feat of rhetoric, no subterfuge of diction, no idle exercise, no mental self-pleasure. These are questions with answers, and in them the composite and contours of a life. So listen this and heed well this advice. Be guarded with that which enters your eyes, for the stage doth inform the play. Falling asleep in public is an art, not a science. I woke up 3 rows removed from the next living soul, checked my pockets, losing ticket secure. My father would slap my face, where you see how his money exchanged our palms, such gentle ease to the revelry of a Tuesday afternoon. More on him later. For now, let us instead consider the strange, eventful history of one Elias Lucky Baldwin. Born in the final year of Jacksonian democracy, with all its promise of land theft and libertine debauchery, when asked for a defining legacy, Baldwin pointed to the Santa Anita racetrack, said, "This was it, and that was lucky." Early westward visionary and pioneer of land speculation and underpaying Mexicans, a tradition to which my labor is accustomed, and a practice to which my employers, both prior and current, have proven themselves not only to be the grandest of enthusiasts, but also the most ardent of practitioners. Bring on the nights, the afterworth bar rush, the rat race towards dusk, because the thought that plagued my mind, the phantom neuron that could use some company or just some drinking, was this: there is far too much death in this valley. Far too many odes to the odious, the murderous, the pious pirates of land, shaping the architecture that hangs over the intersection of Route 66 and the mission system. Where you see fit to judge, this descendant of California law will judge as you must. Me, I prefer to run. For all the world is a tavern. On a night such as this, on a dare, a cantina. And we men and women merely its patrons. We our entrances, our exits, sometimes a little sooner than expected. A toast, To our mothers, our fathers, the lovers, the haters, the cynics, to the decisions that made us, to those that would seek to understand or dismiss us, our resistance to their instructions, to our teachers, our doubters, our enlisters, the true believers, their institutions that would ensnare us in prisons of velvet, to our most vicious detractors, to those who would say just about any cruel thing there is to say about us, to our saboteurs and supporters, to the Inquisition and the ignorers, to these strange, eventful combinations, real and imagined, lift your glass, to the degrees on the wall and the check in the mail. May we all live to outrun them all. But let us leave something to savor, something instead to be said for the evening. Let us not prematurely dip into that pit of profundity, our strange, tragic hits, a review of all this and life surroundings to which you and I have both borne witness. Let us pick up where we left it. Let us speak of the world, its state of affairs, the driving forces, the prevailing interests, cause and effect. Let the conversation renew the news of some day concerning some colleague, a contemporary that some might argue, and I might rightly concur, has been the recipient, as of late, of far too kind, far too public, and might I add, quite unmerited praise and success. And let us, of course, discuss just how precious little democracy there is in the way of things. And I tell you, all this life could afford, but instead, to the greater satisfaction of patrons, prisoners, participants, and audience alike, the specter of commerce insisted upon the conversation. Just imagine an invitation to a reunion with a dear old friend, only to be met with the attempts to be roped into some type of academic pyramid scheme, a tenure-track position in Carbondale, Illinois. I would rather die 1,000 deaths in all the chain restaurants of Monrovia than I woke up in the back of a car, rideshare. Better here than the jailers, I suppose. Though I could not help wonder if I left on my own volition. I checked my pockets, losing tickets still in place. I am, after all, a fool of odd, tragic, and sentiments. Check my phone for the time and destination, 7:30 p.m., child at home. Fellow traveler appears in no mood for engagement, so I close my eyes perchance to dream. When half asleep, my aspirations all seem within reach. Life should not be this hard. And now it is just the driver and I. As we strike conversation, he tells me he has 3 children. He tells me he hails from Michoacan. I lie. I say so do my parents. He asks if I have ever been, and I have, so in this instance, I speak the truth. I tell him that I'm a professor, and that there is a light, and I see a light in his eyes. And now, this has become a matter of public service. I quickly comprise a compromise between the lies he needs to hear and the ones I need to tell. I tell him I'm a very, very famous author. I tell him my father is very, very proud of me. I tell him my life is the fruit of my parents' sacrifice. I tell him anytime I think of them, it brings a tear to my eye. I tell him his children can be anything to which they set their mind. We reach Baldwin Park. We reach the home my father no longer hides his contempt. My father watches television as my mother prepares a plate. She asks about an American friend, by which she means white. I tell her about a full-time position in Southern Illinois that I'm very, 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 very seriously considering taking. My mother begins to cry. My mother runs to the other room to tell my father the good news. I can hear as he says he will believe it when he sees it. My eyes are heavy. They scan the familiar setting. The strange, eventful beginning of me. Portraits of the family. Framed oil paintings. The legends of the home country. The pride of Cuauhtémoc. The folly of Juan Diego. My master's degree. It's a place in between. Somewhere in this home. There is no democracy in the way of things. Thanks, Elba.